Why would they invent a resurrection story that would get them kicked out of the synagogue and then beaten, tortured, and killed?
I think that same argument, though, could be used for many other religions.
Why would they die for something they knew was false? So what's your explanation then? Hallucinations? Wrong tomb? What is it?
I wasn't there, but that's a great thing. That's why I think I don't have to believe in it, because I wasn't there. So you think I'm going to hell?
Sure.
Nesta sessão de perguntas e respostas, uma estudante desafia Frank Turek sobre a confiabilidade do Novo Testamento. Mas, ao longo da conversa, o debate deixa os argumentos acadêmicos e se torna profundamente pessoal. Em um determinado momento, ela faz uma declaração surpreendente: "Eu prefiro deixar de existir do que viver eternamente." Acompanhe comigo.
So I thought your argument was very interesting, especially as someone who has taken a logic course, has studied logic before. Your logical reasoning was interesting to me, and I'm not sure I exactly follow it.
Okay.
Your 2 points especially, and your 3 little points there you had for the credibility of the Bible.
The New Testament? Yeah. You want
Yeah.
to put them up there again?
Sure.
I can do that.
Yeah, for sure. I thought those are especially interesting because I'm not exactly sure, out of all the arguments for God, why you would choose those ones. But let me ask you one about, especially about the eyewitness, is very interesting to me. Do you believe that L. Ron Hubbard is a real person?
Well, he was a real person. You're talking about the guy that wrote Dianetics and is the father of Scientology?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is Scientology real?
Well, I don't believe the beliefs of Scientology are real, but there are Scientologists, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought that was an interesting point then when you were talking about the historical evidence for people like Herod, for people like Pilate in the Bible. I agree. Those are real people. However, I do not think that your argument that you're making regarding them existing in the Bible and them also being real people actually argues for the credibility of the Bible itself. I'm not sure it argues for the existence of God itself or, the credibility of Christianity, just using that.
Well, you're right. That's because I don't just use that in the book. I glossed over the arguments for the existence of God to get to this since it's Easter week.
Sure.
And I can't cover it all. But if we had more time, I could talk about the fine-tuning of the universe and the necessary for intelligence to create the first life and new life forms, and the moral argument for God, and the argument from laws of logic and consciousness and laws of mathematics, those transcendental arguments, if we had more time to get into the arguments for God.
Yes, sir. I'm actually familiar with all of those.
Okay.
And still, I'm an atheist, actually, even being familiar with all of those. But my real question for you right now is, specifically on these eyewitnesses for the resurrection. You argue a lot for the resurrection. Now, a lot of the New Testament, the earliest times the Gospels were ever written down and published were in the 70s AD. People who were writing them, like Paul, never met Jesus. I don't think a lot of people know that, but he did not ever meet Jesus.
Okay, well, why do you think, first of all, why do you think the New Testament documents were written in the 70s and 80s?
That is archaeological facts that they have corroborated, multiple different accounts and multiple different scholars.
What are the archaeological facts that say the New Testament documents were written in the 70s and the 80s?
Those are dated. They're dated around the time literarily, linguistically. You can look it up. I was just reading before I came here, the scholar Bart Ehrman. He had a really great post about that. I encourage you to look at it. I encourage everyone to look at it because a lot of those new Gospels, that's the earliest they were written, was 70s AD. Latest was even up until the 120s AD is when they presented.
Yeah, well, I don't think Bart Ehrman's correct about that. And even if he is correct about it, the source material from the documents themselves predate when they were written. For example, even Bart Ehrman would admit that the creed in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3 to 8, I referred to it very briefly today, that talked about that Paul received what was told to him about who Jesus appeared to. It includes all the people Jesus appeared to with the exception of the women, and then the 500 others. That particular creed goes all the way back to within a year or two of the alleged resurrection itself. So the data is very old. Paul wrote 1 Corinthians in 55 AD. Even Bart Ehrman would agree with that.
Do you have a source for that?
Bart Ehrman.
I'll go look it up afterwards for sure. And I'll check on it because that's not what I found personally. But I'm actually interested too in that case about those eyewitness accounts. Have you ever had a friend who's told you, a funny story, and they're saying, yeah, I swear this happened. I swear I saw it. But, you're not sure. You weren't there. You don't know. Sometimes people embellish a little bit. So I'm not seeing the necessary connection between me believing these eyewitness accounts. Sure, I suppose that there were definitely people, even if these New Testament authors weren't actually seeing the resurrection themselves, which they weren't, even if they were talking to people who were, I'm not sure I actually would believe that, or if I'd have any reason to believe them. So my question is to you, these actual eyewitnesses, what is their credibility? Like, why should I be compelled to believe them on only their word?
Well, because they suffered greatly for saying what they saw, and they were not predisposed to these beliefs. They held beliefs that were opposite this. They didn't think a man could claim to be God. That was blasphemy. In fact, that's what got Jesus killed. They didn't think one guy would rise from the dead in the middle of time. They thought everyone would rise from the dead at the end of time because that's what Daniel and Isaiah say. So they were not predisposed to believe this. They thought they were God's chosen people. Why would they invent a resurrection story that would get them kicked out of the synagogue and then beaten, tortured, and killed?
I think that same argument, though, could be used for many other religions. I mean, the same thing. If every other major religion...
Such as what?
Sure, such as all of the people who have ever died for Islam, who have ever died for pagan religions, etc., things like that. I mean, I don't think it's a great argument to say, just because someone said, yes, this can get me great bodily harm, but yeah, I'm still going to die for it because I believe in it. I don't think I do not see the causal connection between them doing that, and the argument at hand being true.
Why would they die for something they knew was false?
E esse é um detalhe que muitas pessoas deixam passar quando falamos dos primeiros mártires do cristianismo. É verdade que pessoas de diversas religiões morreram por aquilo em que acreditavam, mas há uma diferença importante. Os apóstolos e os primeiros discípulos afirmavam ter sido testemunhas oculares da ressurreição de Jesus. Ou seja, eles não estavam apenas morrendo por uma crença que receberam de outras pessoas, mas por algo que diziam ter visto com os próprios olhos. Se tudo fosse uma invenção, eles saberiam disso. E nesse caso, faria muito pouco sentido enfrentar perseguição, tortura e até a morte por algo que eles mesmos saberiam ser uma mentira.
I don't think, sometimes it's the same thing. It's like we were just talking about truth. I think sometimes I believe that they think what they saw was true.
Okay, why would they think Jesus rose from the dead if he didn't? Why would they think that?
Limited scientific knowledge back then, limited secondhand accounts. You hear from a friend of a friend of a friend.
No. The people that saw it, why would Peter be martyred? Why would Paul be martyred? Why would James be martyred?
For any other reason, I don't see the difference between that and any other religion, any other person who's ever been martyred for anything.
Well, because these people witnessed an empirical event, a resurrection. There's nothing in Islam that says that is equivalent to what Christianity says. Christianity is basing their belief on an empirical event, that a man died after predicting he'd rise from the dead, and then he really did rise from the dead.
Yeah, and I think you could say that
So what's your explanation then? Hallucinations? Wrong tomb? What is it?
I wasn't there, but that's a great thing. That's why I think I don't have to believe in it, because I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what happened. But that's why I don't feel unnecessary, feel like I'm compelled to believe in that.
No one's compelled. You have free will. You go in the direction you want. But let me ask you this, Delaney. If Christianity really was true, would you become a Christian?
I don't think it's true, and I don't think it will be.
If it was.
I don't think it's a good question, honestly. I don't think it is true.
So the answer is no. Okay. If I gave you a book, would you read it?
Sure, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't think it's not fiction. I think there's a lot of things.
Let me just ask you one more question, Delaney.
Sure.
I appreciate you bringing this up, but why would you not possibly want, if there is a God, him to offer you paradise by taking anything you've done wrong upon himself? Why would you not want a being like that to offer you forgiveness and paradise?
I think that's a very interesting question, because I've always been of the opinion that I don't want there to be an afterlife, I find no comfort in it. I find more comfort in there being empty, black nothingness, genuinely. And I'm not saying this to be contrarian or to be, provocative. Genuinely, I think that is more comforting than living in this eternal limbo or whatever. People describe it as perfect happiness. I'm not sure, first of all, I don't see evidence for that. Second of all, I'm not sure I want that. Furthermore, I'm not sure that I would want to be there when I know people are, according to your religion, suffering somewhere else. If I know that, one of my friends who sinned for whatever reason is burning in hell forever and I'm just hanging out in heaven, I don't think that would be perfect happiness. I don't think I really want that. So I really do not honestly see what is compelling people to want there to be an afterlife, to want there to be.
So if your friend, as you put it, is literally burning in hell, what would your friend want you to choose?
I don't know if they could think right now because they'd probably be burning, as y'all say.
No,
but
if they are conscious and they know you're still here, what choice would they want you to make?
Well, they'd probably want me to, be in heaven. But guess what? That's what I wouldn't feel comfortable knowing that my friend is still burning there.
Okay, well, what you've just done is you've said exactly what C.S. Lewis said.
And what was that?
C.S. Lewis said that there's only two kinds of people in the end. Those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God says, thy will be done. If you don't want Jesus now, you're not going to want him in eternity. You will be separated from him, and that's what hell is.
So you think I'm going to hell?
Sure. If Christianity's true, you just said you don't want to go to heaven. What else is there? There's only two possible options. You're either going to be with Jesus in the afterlife or you're not. What other option is there?
Well, I think there's the option that you're wrong, personally.
Well, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
You're right.
I think so, yeah. It's okay.
But you talked about looking at evidence. Mm-hmm. How can there even be evidence in a world that there is no God, there is no organizer, there is no mind behind all this? Evidence, we wouldn't even exist. Nothing would exist. Reason wouldn't exist unless there's a mind that has given us the laws of reason and minds to know evidence.
Respectfully, I think we've jumped a few steps ahead in the argument there.
No, we jumped way back. Before we even get to the New Testament, we've got to establish why can we even know what evidence is, and why is this an orderly universe to even know what is true and what isn't?
Absolutely. I think it's due to science. It's due to the wonderful, physics, how the universe came to be. Yes, I do think it started. No, I do not think it was God. No,
what was it?
I think it was physics.
But physics had a beginning.
O restante do debate segue para argumentos cosmológicos e filosóficos, mas, para mim, o ponto mais marcante já havia ficado claro. Para algumas pessoas, nenhuma quantidade de evidências será suficiente. Quando Frank Turek pergunta se ela se tornaria cristã caso o cristianismo fosse verdadeiro, ela não responde diretamente e, em seguida, afirma que prefere deixar de existir a viver eternamente. Isso revela que, muitas vezes, o problema não é intelectual, mas sim no coração. Se você quiser assistir ao debate completo, o link está na descrição deste vídeo. Agora eu quero saber a sua opinião. O que você achou desse debate? Há algum argumento que você acrescentaria ou algum ponto que Frank Turek deixou passar? Escreva nos comentários. Se você gosta desse tipo de conteúdo sobre apologética, filosofia e fé cristã, deixe o seu like, inscreva-se no canal e ative o sininho para não perder os próximos vídeos. Que Deus te abençoe e até a próxima!